In emergency medicine, patients rarely die from what we don't know. They die from what we miss, delay, or underestimate.
Welcome back to the Trauma Bay. You survived our first briefing, but the most lethal threats in the ER aren't the loud, bloody emergencies. They are the silent, invisible traps.
That's the scariest part. It's the subtle fatigue, the harmless fainting spell, or our own implicit biases that quietly slip past us and cost lives.
Exactly. That's why we are declaring Code Red Episode 2. We are exposing the next set of fatal ER mistakes and giving you the exact gold standard protocols you need to stop them.
10 more deadly traps, 10 more lifelines. Let's get started.
Mistake number 1, dismissing fatigue. Picture this. A 65-year-old woman comes into triage. She has zero chest pain, no arm numbness, and no shortness of breath. Her only complaint is profound, unusual exhaustion and maybe a little mild indigestion. What is your gut reaction?
Honestly, fatigue is one of the most common and vague complaints we see every single shift. I'd probably suspect a mild viral illness, maybe anemia, or just stress. I'd order basic labs, recommend some rest, and have her follow up with her primary doctor.
And that right there is a lethal assumption. The fatal consequence? Female infarctions often completely lack typical chest pain. While you're brushing off her stress, her heart muscle is quietly dying. If you send her home, she might go into fatal cardiac arrest in her sleep.
That is terrifying. We're conditioned to look for the classic elephant sitting on the chest. If the presentation is that subtle, how do we catch a massive heart attack before she walks out the door?
Here is your gold standard correction. Order serial troponins immediately. If a female patient, especially with risk factors, presents with unexplained profound fatigue, you must rule out ischemia. Treat her fatigue as a chest pain equivalent. Never dismiss it. Test it. Mistake number 2, ignoring sentinel headaches. Let's look at a classic trap. A 35-year-old comes in complaining of a sudden severe headache. They took some ibuprofen at home and the pain is already starting to improve by the time you evaluate them.
Well, if the pain is already improving with basic over-the-counter meds, my stress level drops. I'd probably diagnose a bad tension headache or a migraine, offer some IV fluids, and prepare their discharge papers.
And that is exactly how patients die. The fatal consequence here is that minor leaks often precede fatal aneurysmal ruptures. That migraine was actually a sentinel bleed. If you send them home because they feel a little better, their aneurysm could catastrophically rupture the second they walk out our doors.
That is terrifying. Headaches are one of our most common complaints, and we physically cannot CT scan every single person who comes in with one. How do we catch these minor leaks without overloading the radiology department?
Here is your gold standard correction. Apply the Ottawa rule. If a patient describes a sudden thunderclap onset, even if the pain is getting better, you cannot let it go. You must apply the Ottawa rule, and if they meet the criteria, you scan immediately. Never ignore the sentinel headache. Mistake number 3, minimizing syncope. Picture a 40-year-old guy who suddenly passes out at the gym, hits the floor, but wakes up a few seconds later. By the time he's in your ER, he feels completely fine, his vitals are stable, and he just wants to go home. What's the plan?
I see this all the time. I'd suspect simple vasovagal syncope or dehydration, especially since he was working out. I'd run a basic EKG, give him some IV fluids, and get his discharge paperwork ready.
And that is a fatal trap. The consequence here, fainting frequently masks massive pulmonary embolisms. A large blood clot transiently blocked blood flow to his lungs, starving his brain of oxygen and causing him to drop. If you just hydrate him and send him home, that clot could shift and cause sudden death.
That is terrifying because simple fainting is so incredibly common. How do we separate a benign faint from a lethal blood clot without overscanning every single patient?
Here is your gold standard correction. Unexplained syncope demands D-dimer testing. You cannot just write it off as dehydration. If there is no obvious proven benign cause for the fainting spell, you must draw a D-dimer to screen for that clot. Never minimize the drop. Mistake number 4, implicit stereotyping. Let's talk about an uncomfortable reality in a packed waiting room. A 45-year-old patient from a marginalized demographic comes in complaining of severe, diffuse pain. He looks disheveled, he's agitated, and it's 2 a.m. on a busy Friday night.
In a chaotic ER, it's easy for cognitive saturation to set in. Our brains look for shortcuts. Sometimes unconscious biases creep up, and a provider might quickly assume it's drug-seeking behavior or alcohol-related. We might delay their imaging to focus on a clearer emergency.
And that is a fatal trap. The consequence? Overcrowding triggers biased, delayed patient care. While that patient is pushed to the back of the line because of a demographic assumption, their bowel could be perforating, or they could be bleeding internally. Implicit stereotyping physically harms patients by blinding us to real pathology.
It's a hard truth to admit, but when the system is overloaded, those mental shortcuts happen automatically. How do we bypass our own unconscious biases?
Here is your gold standard correction. Treat objective physiology, not demographic assumptions. You must force data-driven decision-making. Look strictly at the vitals, the EKG, the objective measurements. Eliminate the bias by actively choosing to treat the data, not the narrative.
Mistake number 5, search satisficing. Here is the scenario. A 25-year-old gets into a high-speed motorcycle crash. You rush him into the trauma bay, get the x-rays, and immediately spot a massive, very obvious femur fracture. The bone is practically sticking out of his leg. What happens next?
In that kind of situation, the whole team naturally focuses on the loudest, most gruesome injury. We are rushing to stabilize the leg, calling orthopedics, and getting pain management on board. We found the problem, so we immediately focus on fixing it. And that is a fatal cognitive trap. The consequence? Finding one fracture completely blinds you to others. It is human nature to stop searching once you find a satisfying answer. While the entire room is staring at that broken femur, no one notices the subtle cervical spine fracture or the internal bleeding in his abdomen. The hidden injury is the one that kills him.
That is a chilling thought. It's so easy to get tunnel vision when the primary injury is that distracting. How do we force ourselves to keep looking when the problem already seems solved?
Here is your gold standard correction. Force secondary surveys. You must intentionally hunt for unseen injuries. Once you find that first major fracture, you must actively tell yourself the search isn't over. You restart from the top, head to toe every single time. Never let search satisficing stop the hunt.
Mistake number 6, psychiatric anchoring. Imagine a 50-year-old patient brought in by police. They are highly agitated, pacing the room, yelling, and acting completely irrational. They have a known history of schizophrenia in their chart. What's your first move?
With a known psych history and active agitation, I'm thinking this is an acute psychiatric exacerbation. We need to protect the patient and the staff. I'd order some chemical sedation, maybe Haldol and Ativan, and consult the psychiatry team for an evaluation.
And that assumption is a deadly trap. The fatal consequence? Agitation often masks lethal neurotoxicity, hidden head trauma, or an active brain bleed. If you immediately anchor on their psychiatric history and sedate them, you might be heavily medicating a patient whose brain is actually bleeding from a fall.
That is a terrifying blind spot. It is so easy to see a psychiatric label in the chart and just assume their current behavior is part of their mental illness. How do we safely handle these patients without missing a medical emergency?
Here is your gold standard correction. You must clear organic pathology before assigning a psychiatric label. Absolute organic clearance is required. Force yourself to look at their vitals, check a blood glucose, and push for a thorough exam. Never assume it's just a psychiatric issue until you've proven their brain isn't dying.
Mistake number 7, CT tunnel vision. Imagine a 60-year-old patient comes in with severe abdominal pain. You rush them to the scanner, and the CT scan quickly shows acute appendicitis. You call surgery, high-five the team, and consider it a major win.
Absolutely. We found the acute surgical issue. The patient is prepped for the OR, and we quickly move on to the next patient in the waiting room.
And that is a fatal trap. The consequence? Focused reads miss secondary vascular catastrophes. Because everyone completely stopped looking after they spotted the inflamed appendix, no one noticed the subtly expanding abdominal aortic aneurysm sitting right next to it.
That is terrifying. We rely so heavily on the initial read to guide our immediate life-saving management. If we spot the obvious problem, our brains automatically stop searching the rest of the scan. How do we break that habit?
Here is your gold standard correction. Demand systematic secondary reads every time. Never accept just the primary finding. Once the acute issue is identified, you must force a complete, disciplined review of all other structures on that film. Don't let the obvious finding blind you to a hidden killer.
Mistake number 8, first impression anchoring. Let's set the scene. EMS brings in a 55-year-old patient who smells strongly of alcohol, slurring his words and stumbling. The paramedic hands you the chart and says, just another intoxicated frequent flyer. We see this every single weekend. If they are clinically stable, the standard protocol is just to let them sleep it off in the corner with a banana bag and reevaluate when they're sober. And that initial assumption is a deadly trap. The fatal consequence? Early assumptions block alternative life-saving diagnoses. You anchored on the smell of alcohol, but what if his slurred speech and stumbling are actually from an acute stroke, severe hypoglycemia, or a subdural hematoma? While he's sleeping it off, his brain is dying. That is a terrifying thought. The first impression is so powerful, especially when EMS hands you the diagnosis on a silver platter. How do we break that mental lock? Here is your gold standard correction. Initiate diagnostic timeouts. Before you finalize any treatment plan based on a first impression, you must force a hard pause. Look at the clinical picture and explicitly ask yourself, what else?
break the anchor, widen your differential, and save the patient.
Mistake number 9, ignoring pediatric vitals. Here is a scenario that terrifies seasoned doctors. A 3-year-old child is brought in with a nasty stomach bug. They look relatively okay, maybe a little sleepy, but they are sitting up. However, their heart rate is hovering around 160. Kids are almost always tachycardic in the ER. If they are crying in a strange environment or have a slight fever, their heart rate naturally shoots up. If the child looks comfortable and their blood pressure is normal, I'd give some oral fluids, maybe some Tylenol, and just keep an eye on them. And that assumption is a fatal trap. The consequence? Ignoring pediatric vitals completely masks compensated shock. Unlike adults, a child's cardiovascular system is incredibly resilient. They will maintain a perfectly normal blood pressure until the absolute last second. If you wait for their blood pressure to drop, they will abruptly and irreversibly crash. That is incredibly deceptive. If their blood pressure is giving us a false sense of security, how do we catch the shock before they toad? Here is your gold standard correction. Never brush off an abnormal pediatric heart rate. You must rigidly apply age-adjusted vital sign parameters. If the heart rate or respiratory rate is out of range for their specific age, you must assume they are in early shock until proven otherwise. Trust the numbers, not just the child's demeanor. Mistake number 10, organizational overcapacity. The waiting room has 80 people. 40 admitted patients are boarding in the ER hallways. You are evaluating patients in chairs and corridors. The system is completely buckling under the weight.
That is the reality of modern emergency medicine. When we operate at 200% capacity, we're just trying to keep our heads above water. We are forced to move fast, taking mental shortcuts and skipping double checks just to survive the shift.
And that is the ultimate systemic trap. The fatal consequence? System-induced patient harm. Overcapacity completely obliterates your safety nets. You miss a subtle vital sign change in a hallway border, or a critically ill patient quietly codes in the waiting room because no one was available to monitor them.
We can't single-handedly fix the broken healthcare system or build new hospital beds during a shift. How do we protect our patients when the ER is literally overflowing?
Here is your gold standard correction. Trigger formal surge protocols. When capacity breaks, you must instantly shift from standard operations to disaster management. Enforce continuous monitoring for high-risk hallway boarders. Demand frequent re-triage of the waiting room. And never let the chaos dictate the quality of your care. 10 more deadly traps, 10 more lifelines. It all comes down to outsmarting the chaos. Exactly, which brings us to the ultimate golden rule of the ER. Trust your training, systematically verify your thinking, and always, always defend the patient.
Trust nothing, verify everything. Question your thinking. When you actively break your own cognitive anchors, you stop being just a doctor and you become the ultimate defender of the patient. If this briefing changed how you practice, hit the like button, share it with your clinical team, and subscribe so you never miss a Code Red update. Stay sharp out there.